Let the word go
The
forth.
challenge, the opportunity to connect. The 1960s, a time of imagination and change, a time of anger and fear. The 1960s, a pioneering program called Challenge.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
That looked at our connections, our divisions, through the lens of shared values.
With something real.
60 years later, we examine our divisions, our connections, our shared pains and successes in a new program called Challenge 2.0. The Steilacoom High School baseball field is a second home to Corey and Kelly Widman. Corey is the team coach. Kelly treats the players like second sons. Their son Reese was the team captain and a standout pitcher.
Pitch, Reese. Pitch. Good pitch, Reese.
And hitter.
Oh, there. Nice job, Reese. Woo.
Now his only visible presence is on the team wall of fame. He died from suicide January 7th of 2023. And this silhouette,
that's Reese.
That's Reese right there.
That is Reese.
When you first put this up and Reese was no longer with you, I imagine that was a painful moment to walk by.
Yeah.
Was it? And then how has it changed?
Well, when we did the silhouettes, it was me and Mrs. Mock and a couple of the players and a couple of the art students. We did this. When my brother and I put his plaque up, it was just me and my brother Casey,
Mm-hmm.
and it was tough because, like I said, Reese wasn't a huge individual achievement type of person. He was very much a team guy, but it's hard. It's hard because he's not going to get to see that.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
it's therapeutic for us, for the community.
Ironically, the Stilly Boys Wall of Fame was in part Reese's idea. His was leadership rooted not just from seniority, but from example, and from his deep care for his teammates.
Good job, Reese.
Reese's death was devastating.
My dad came in my room, 7 o'clock in the morning, in tears. I never see my dad cry.
Got woke up by a phone call, and it was just like, yeah, Reese Widman passed. And it was like, I just started bawling right there in my bed.
More than a year after his death, his impact on his teammates, his inspiration, is measured not simply by the presence of his name on their jerseys, but with his qualities written on their hearts.
Fighting for something greater than yourself really rose to the top. And that was something that I really clung to last season with a lot of excess emotion and a lot of struggle and pain. And I think we've talked about this quite a bit, but there was a lot of good that came from struggling through last season.
You know, just trying to just always check up on people now. It's more surreal.
Yeah.
And, you know, even if they look like they're doing fine, you know, there's nothing wrong with being like, hey, how's your day? Or how you doing today? Or how are you?
How Reese's family and his friends have responded to their loss and how it's making a difference is the subject of this edition of Challenge 2.0. So this is the second episode of the Unimaginable Journey, and as you saw last week, we're talking about the story of Reese Widman, and with us are Kelly and Corey Widman. Thank you so much for joining us again this week. One of the very articulate writers on suicide, Ron Rolheiser, points out that those who die from suicide are invariably very sensitive, and that's really seemed to sum up your son's behavior, your son's character. And that led to a new program that you've started. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and what it does?
We formed our nonprofit called Whitty's Work, basically to help others. Our goals are to spread Reese's message. He left behind a message of do what I couldn't do and get help. And that's one thing that we want to pass along. So with our nonprofit, we do some speaking events. We have many Whitty's Work ambassadors that will also spread the message throughout their high schools and colleges or workforce as they graduate and move on to the next step.
Yeah, our goal is to stop the stigma around mental wellness and young men getting help or anybody getting help. Mm-hmm. And Kelly and I realized early on that, just the two of us couldn't do this together, and it really takes a community effort, and just like I said in episode 1, I mean, I don't think Reese realized the impact he had on people, and I think it shows with our ambassador. These guys want to step up, do something, help us advocate, and help somebody else.
And I think to connect those two different elements, as I've heard you talk about Reese and as I've read about Reese and seen some of the videos, community was really important to him, not only in terms of supporting him, but also he felt it to be a definite responsibility to give back to the community. And that, are there any particularly favorite memories that you have of how Reese interacted with the community and how that was important?
Oh yeah, I mean, he was very proud to be in the Steilacoom community. I mean, sense of ownership, pride. One of the things about Reese is very religious, and during COVID he went with Kelly every weekend to set up outside mass for people, and it was just one of those little things that he did. Wasn't a big deal to him. I don't know if a lot of people realize that, but it was important for him to help the older community get out there and
Still be able to celebrate mass,
right.
and despite the shutdown with COVID.
We've told Reese's story in the last episode. I wonder if you could tell me at what point after his passing, after his death, that you came up with this idea of Woody's work, the ambassador program.
It was pretty quick. I want to say in the first couple of months, definitely. And it was so quickly that we were able to get our nonprofit, the 501c3, in May, and we had the first annual Reese Woodman Memorial Tournament for baseball that July. We had our first Stomp Out the Stigma race in August. So, I mean, we had that idea pretty quick. The Woody's Work Ambassadors, that started in the winter time of 2023. So that was a later development.
And you'd asked us in the first episode if we ever stop being parents. No, we don't, because I mean, Reese loved his friends, loved his teammates, and whether these guys like it or not,
They just got 2 more parents.
Yeah, they did,
Yes.
and we saw them hurting and wanting to help, and again, going back to Reese's message of do what I couldn't do, get help, and to help others. We just thought it was a unique way to get the boys involved so that they could start healing too, and carry their friend's message.
You're gesturing over there, so I think we're going to let our viewers in on a secret. We have 2 Woody's ambassadors with us. Thank you very much for joining us. I might ask both of you, how did you first learn of Woody's Work Ambassadors, and what led you to become involved with it?
Corey reached out to me a little beforehand, before he started sending out to everyone, but the idea he had of just getting all of Reese's friends involved and sharing a story. And so I thought that was a great idea, and then he sent me a text one day of, hey, I need all this information from you, like stories of Reese, where you go to college, all the stuff about you. And so I sent it out to him, and next thing I know, I saw a post on their Instagram about, hey, Devin Patterson, Woody's Work Ambassador, Central Lake College, so-and-so, and then from there I just saw probably about 40 of them now that are just all over their social media pages and throughout all colleges and high schools throughout the state also, and in other states too, so just pretty cool to see so far.
Kevin, how
Yeah,
about you?
absolutely. I first heard about it from Corey at baseball practice, I think, because baseball season started shortly after, and the idea had sparks, and he told me about it, and I was super stoked about it. I was very excited to be a part of it, and yeah, waiting for that text that Jevin got as well, and once I got it, I was very excited to give him all the information, got that filled out.
So tell us a little bit more, and Kelly and Corey certainly add in as well. Tell us about the sort of things that you do by the ambassador program.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is just sharing Reese's story, what he went through, and that it's that you don't have to go through what he went through, and in his final moments, he thought of other people, and that he wants other people to get help, And so kind of just like let people know that if you are hurting, if you're going through these same things, that it's okay to reach out to other people. But it's also sharing who Reese was as a person, and that like live life the way Reese lived life and be joyful and happy, and just sharing his overall life as his journey. But it's also like I'm at Centralia College, and so my like job, you could say, is like spreading the word to people in that area, because like obviously the people in this area in Steilacoom, Lakewood, Tacoma, they all really know this story, but the more you can branch it out, the more you can share your story, the more you can learn from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Corey said earlier, stomping out the stigma of mental health around sports and athletes, especially younger athletes, and just being that person in the community, being someone that people can reach out to when they're hurting, and being aware, learning what we've learned from Reese's story.
When you start an encounter, when you start to talk to somebody, do you ever run into a certain reluctance to talk about this?
I mean, yeah, everyone's kind of just like, they think they're weak if they have to talk to other people, but like that's just not the case at all. Like you talk to people, that's a good thing. That shows the strength that you're willing and wanting to get better. And people, yeah, they're kind of shy or timid at first, but I think like the more you can have that conversation and make it more of a comfortable conversation, a normal conversation, not like one that's out of the norm, I think the better off you can be.
Absolutely. I mean, Jevin covered a lot of it, but behind a smile, you never know what's happening. So.
Very true. In just preparing for this, doing some of the research, I read that the suicide rate, I believe, had increased greatly among young athletes. Maybe you could give us some insights in terms of the particular pressures and what might be causing that increase.
Yeah, I think now more than ever, there's just more pressure on young athletes to perform at a higher level. I mean, and I think people nowadays, on social media, you're comparing yourself to everyone out there, and like people are going to be good, people are going to be not as good. It's just like you just got to be who you are and not compare yourself to other people.
Absolutely, the game's changing, and people are trying to keep up and thinking they need to be doing so much better than they are.
One of the things I had noticed is you have adults critiquing and criticizing a 17-year-old high school baseball player, and it's like you got to be kidding. This guy's, I mean, he's playing for fun, or he's playing, to try to get himself somewhere, and you got a grown man on social media, dissecting how he did. And it wasn't a tournament director or a scout or a coach, somebody that I would appreciate that feedback. It was just a random Joe, and it's like, man, why do we give those people a platform?
You've achieved a great deal over a very short period of time. Is it largely in South Puget Sound? Because, of course, this is where we're at right now. Or has it expanded beyond that?
Our Reese's
ambassadors.
So we have, we have ambassadors that are going to be down in GCU next year. We have USC, Ohio. I mean, Boise. They're all over the place, and it's just getting bigger. And we even have Pierce College baseball players that didn't know Reese. They know that he should have been on their team last year, and they've reached out, and some guys that don't even know him want to spread his message because this means something to them, and it does. It hits close to home because, like I said in the first episode, you could have asked 100 of his friends, and not one of them would have said that they even thought he was going through anything.
Do you ever sit back and say, as we said, it's a very short period of time, this has really expanded beyond our dreams over this short period of time, and does that give you a sense of healing through all of this?
Definitely a sense of healing. Like, this is therapeutic for us to know that we're helping other people. And just when we feel like we can't do one more thing, like it's just so, we just feel down for ourselves, for our personal grief, we might get a message or a text saying, this person was really helped by your message. And it's just when we need it most, we get that little wind in our sail and able to keep going with our efforts. So it's definitely healing and therapeutic.
As the ambassador program has expanded, are there other parents perhaps that have gone through a similar situation that have also elected to become involved in this or something like it?
There are people that have been affected with mental illness that have reached out. Not necessarily people that have experienced a loss by suicide. We get messages of support, definitely, but not necessarily involved with these work.
Yeah, and everybody's journey is different, you know. I mean, mine and Kelly's are different, you know, and I don't think anybody can necessarily do it the right or the wrong way. I mean, like Gavin said earlier, I mean, less than 2 months after Reese passed, we're on the baseball field, and I remember telling the boys one of the first days of practice, hey, we all miss him. Some of us are going to cry, some of us are going to laugh, but the guys that are crying and having a hard time, don't be upset at the guys that are having a good time, because we're all out here for, you know, to help heal a community and you know, to help somebody that may not have the courage right now. And again, like I think Jevin said, I mean, Reese in his final moments to have been thinking of other people.
As we talk about the healing aspect, the impact, and the wisdom of this sort of approach, I'd like to introduce two more guests. We have Dr. Bonnie Jordan, who is a pediatrician, and Elizabeth Gracier, who is a counselor. Welcome, first of all, and thank you for joining in on this conversation. As you've heard this discussion of the Whitty's work and the Ambassadors Program, had you been aware of any program of this sort before? And what do you think is the importance of having something like this?
So I am a developmental behavioral pediatrician. My primary job is to work with children and youth. And I also happen to be active duty Army, working at Madigan. And I think, I just want to share anything I have. My insights today are my own opinions, my professional opinions, and not those of the military or Department of Defense. I have not. I've heard of other programs after a youth or a family member has been a victim of suicide. I've heard of other programs being created or started in their name to help spread the word, but they're all different. I have not heard of an ambassador or similar program before this. There may be some out there, but not that I am familiar with. And it is really incredible to see the impact that it has had in our local community and beyond, because as has been said, many of these ambassadors are going off to colleges in other states and locations and able to spread the word. And so it's healing for them, but also potentially reaching out well beyond our community.
And Liz, what has been your experience with that?
My experience too. So I am lucky enough as a therapist to work in a school and also teach at St. Martin's University. And I haven't seen the peer-to-peer support, I think, is key, and that is something that is unique. So while we may rely on things like the CDC or county level, the peer-to-peer is what I think makes it unique. So it's not just coming from a therapist or a doctor, not to diminish what we do too, but the peer-to-peer support is unique.
Within both of your fields, within that of counseling and within that of medicine, it would strike me that, as you've both said, you've had experience with this before. There is the professional impact, but there's also the personal impact. You can't leave those experiences behind in the counseling office or the medical clinic, can you?
For me, it's very impactful. I was close with Reese and his family prior to his death, and I remember going back to work and feeling very inadequate. Am I going to be able to help my patients and help kids? Am I going to miss something? And over time, I think really by watching and being inspired by Corey and Kelly and how they've moved into this just passionate advocacy, I think I've transformed professionally and personally into, I'm going to advocate for my patients on every level to make sure we're not missing mental health or suicidal thoughts and behaviors. And also within my professional realm, in the very short months after Reese died, we experienced the suicide of a colleague, and another close colleague of mine experienced the suicide of a sibling. And so just recognizing the sad prevalence, but also really just being very inspired to fight against it, to talk about it, to stop the stigma, and bring it forward as something that we all need to have more willingness to talk about, address, and recognize.
Liz, what's been your perspective and experience?
I do think suicide's a public health crisis. I do have extended family members who have taken their own lives, to include this year. So it is personal and professional. I always say when a student sort of hangs out by my door and comes in and wants to talk about these things, it's a hard conversation, but we have to go there. I think there'll be some questions coming up, but looking at both things like protective factors, as well as those that are personal. And for myself, anyone that has committed suicide that I have had as a client, you typically remember their names, and it's something that you carry with you the rest of your life. And to encourage others to do something with their message, as we are doing with Whitty's work today, and then with others as well, is to not feel ashamed or feel that we can't talk about these. And in mental health or in medicine, we have HIPAA and FERPA in the school system. We're not able to talk about these things except with colleagues. So it is something that we typically carry with ourselves. But that's what we're here for. That's what we're trained for. And we certainly want to encourage, at least I can't speak for you, but anyone that has thoughts or feelings, to please talk with a mental health therapist.
So one point that we might also be able to make here is, if you're a teenager or a young person that comes into a session, either counseling for something totally different or a medical appointment, this is not necessarily targeting you or a perceived problem. It's just something that you're seeing enough with the patient body that you need to bring up, and you're just doing so for their benefit at that point.
I think, that's why we're all here today, is to get this out. I think in the past it's been a taboo, right? Like almost a dirty word if you're saying, hey, I'm not feeling, like I want to be here, But, like I said earlier, these guys play sports, they beat themselves up, break legs, they go get help for that. When they're sick, they go get help. Instead of it being a taboo or a stigma attached to it, how do we make it better? I know that at the high school, it was almost like they wanted to sweep it under the rug. And not that they did what they thought was right, and they tried to do the best that they could, but where Kelly and I are like, hey, use his picture, use his name, use his story, get it out there. If you, I don't know, like I think I had said one time to Bonnie, remember when we were going through the old buckle up for safety, and then we had a caricature of a little kid in the back seat buckling up. Does that really resonate? I don't know. But these guys knew Reese, and when they're old and they get to talk about him when they're out, living their lives and working jobs. He's a real person to all of us, and it shouldn't be what it is today, and that's what we're trying to fight and trying to
and
help.
Just truly normalize the conversation about people's mental health. We talk about pain when we're asking people when they come into the hospital, what's your pain level? Why not talk? Why not screen everybody? And we do now routinely screen for suicidal ideations and any history of depression, any mental health issues. But it's not widespread. Reese was not screened for suicidal ideations at his neurologist office. But we worked with them after the fact, and I was very open with them, and I said, I don't blame you for Reese's passing, but I think this needs to change, and you need to implement depression and suicide screening for every patient, because you're prescribing this medication that has a side effect. And they have since implemented that screening.
And that's a win.
That's a definite win.
It is a win.
And we're going to cover that in much greater detail in the next program in terms of the changes and the recognition that this has many different faces, and there are many different journeys and stories. Before we sign off from this episode, and I thank you all for participating in this, Jevon and Gavin, I'd ask you, what changes have you seen in terms of the conversation with teammates, given your work as ambassadors and given the experience that everybody has had of somebody very close, very important, very influential in their life like Reese? What changes have you seen in terms of the willingness to dialogue, to admit that we're not feeling where we need to be emotionally or mentally?
Yeah, I think it's just become a more comfortable conversation because obviously you're close with all your teammates and everything like that. So like the fact that you're surrounded by 15 whatever people that care about you and love you, it's like a safe haven almost, and it's just more comfortable to talk about, I feel like.
Absolutely. Within Silicum, it's become, like, we've all become so much closer and been able to take care of each other, reach out to each other. Like, we all say, love you now. We all say, drive safe when we're leaving. Like, and it's everybody. All of us say that to each other. Just
like obviously, we all went through the same thing with Reese, and no one wants that to happen to anyone ever again. So, like, it's just a way more normal conversation to have now, just to check on everyone.
I told you it's had the opposite effect.
Exactly. It was a gift you didn't want to pass on, but it's a gift that you are all passing on. And I thank you very much for your participation in this conversation. And we're going to continue this looking at the wider perspective of this and some of your professional perspectives as well. So thank you all very much. And we thank you for joining us on this episode of Challenge 2.0. We hope you'll do so again next week. Thank you.